Turks, we got a hell of a Monday show for you guys. Don't miss a minute of this show. It's action packed. Later in this hour, an expose on Ben Carson. If you wanted to see all of his relevant lies in one place, we're going to bring it to you. We got the videotape on it. It involves Black Klingon Jesus. It also, I'm not kidding, that's a thing. It involves Ben Carson basically becoming the Oscar Schindler of black folks, but in favor of white folks. You'll see, okay? And then we've got a phenomenal Fox News catfight for you guys. A legendary Fox News catfight. Maybe the best we've ever seen. Okay, and then the second hour, how is Starbucks coffee disrespecting Jesus? Oh, I love that story. I love it. I know it's near the end, but I love it. And speaking of near the end, I hope we get to it. Now people are renting moms. Okay, why are they renting moms? How much does a mom cost? And what are you doing with mom? Oh, no, it's not like that. Okay, all right, all of that in today's 2-hour action-packed show. Like I said, don't miss a minute of it. All right, here we go. Let's get started because we got a lot of show for you guys. Donald Trump is very clear about his intentions in the Middle East. He's not one of those guys who sugarcoats it. Well, we're here to bring liberation to the Iraqi people. Operation Liberation has been... No, liberation, democracy, yada, 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 protect Israel, whatever it is. No, not interested. Here's what Donald Trump is interested in. The oil. And he doesn't mince his words. Serious.
You'd step up the campaign against ISIS even though you believe that Vladimir Putin is getting stuck in a quagmire by going in?
Well, I'm not looking to quagmire. I'm looking to take the oil. I want to take the oil. I want the oil. And I've been saying that for a long time. The Middle East is one big fat quagmire. I'm all for Russia going in and knocking and dropping bombs on ISIS. As far as I'm concerned, we don't have to have exclusivity on that. But we're going to have to do something about ISIS, and we're going to have to do something about what's going on over there.
That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. George, O-I-L, the oil. What part of this is unclear? I'm going to go in there, take it, put it in my pocket. Okay, I drink their milkshake. Okay, no. Syria, Iraq, and geopolitical stability. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, now wait, you said Russia would be going into a quagmire if they keep bombing, but you want to do bombing. Yeah, I'm not going to get into the quagmire. I'm just going to go and strategically steal the oil and come out. O-I-L. Was I not clear enough? Now, of course, that's a preposterous way of thinking. It's childlike in its simplicity, as usual, Donald Trump. First of all, Russia does not appear to be bombing ISIS. That's their cover story. In fact, they're helping to keep Bashar Assad in power. If he was in power in Syria and regained control of all of its territory, well, then ISIS wouldn't have the oil. Syria would have the oil, so you'd have to steal it from the Syrians. Now, there's a portion of Iraq that ISIS has under control. Again, if you help to defeat ISIS, that doesn't become the 51st state. It then becomes part of Iraq, as it always has been, at least as long as Iraq's been around. So then you'd have to go and take up a new fight with the Iraqi government. Oh, remember how I helped you bomb ISIS? Now I'm going to take your oil for that. My guess is that they would disagree. Okay. What a child. What a child. But at least he's direct. And there's a lot of people that this is going to appeal to. They're going to look at this and go, yeah, wait a minute. Now, I don't care about liberating Iraqis. Syrians, I don't know what to liberate them from. Where the hell are they anyway? No, I want the oil, Lebowski. And this is their guy. For the simpletons in our country, and there is some significant percentage of them, they hear that and they're like, finally, man, it's bringing truth to power. We go in there, we bomb the crap out of them, we kill them all. There's no boots on the ground. How that happens, I don't know. Don't we need some brutes to at least put some drills in so we can drink their milkshake? Okay. Somehow, magically, there's no quagmire, there's no boots on the ground, we bomb the hell out of everybody, and then we just take the oil, put it in our pocket, and come back home. Well, if that's what you want, I guess Donald Trump's your candidate. He's not going to be able to get that done. I mean, if you ask him about specifics, you know what he says? I will be very, very strong in how I deal with this. That's a direct quote. Oh, that answers it. Who's stupid enough to believe this guy? But Donald, how are you going to pay for the whole thing? I'm going to make the Mexicans pay for our bombing of Iraq and Syria. Then I'm going to take the oil. Who's going to transport it? The Norwegians. I'm going to make them do it by being strong. Okay, he didn't actually say the Norwegians. But hold. Wait for it. Okay. All right. Now, that's Donald Trump, but we're not done with oil. The more important oil story coming up, involves David. Okay. David Vitter is a senator from Louisiana. He's running for re-election. And he's a Republican, so the Republicans claim to be against crony capitalism. And he wants to prove it. Great! I love it. I've been challenging the Republicans to prove they're against crony capitalism from day one, right? So he's going to strike out against that very, very powerful lobby, the solar energy and renewable energy lobby. Okay, well, let's let him run with this thing now. He says we have some tax credits that are really giveaways and spending items by another name. For instance, the solar tax credit. That's a check from the taxpayers for folks to buy solar panels. It's really a spending program, and it's a big check. I don't think the state taxpayers should be in the business of buying folks solar panels, mostly folks who are perfectly well off. Oh, okay. So now, if you're a Republican or conservative, that might sound pretty appealing to you, and you're going to find out in a minute that that is a significant check that he's talking about. All right, let's rip that subsidy away from the solar companies. They don't need that. What do they need? The idea here is they're a new industry. You want to support them so that, for example, we could have energy independence, so we're not reliant on Saudi Arabia, and then we don't say anything when almost all the bombers on 9/11 were Saudis, right? So we want the independence. Solar wind would get us that independence, but I don't want to subsidize it. A lot of people will say, okay, I hear you. Now, we also subsidize other forms of energy in America, including the oil and gas industry. Now, wait a minute, they're not a new industry. They don't exactly need our help. They're, in fact, the most profitable companies in the world. Along with Apple, they're in the top 5 consistently, those companies. Not most revenue, most profit. They are enormously profitable. They don't need a nickel from the taxpayers. Now, they also get a lot of money. I'll tell you how much in a second. David Vitter, if you're in the interest of taking away subsidies, needless subsidies that are coming from taxpayer pockets, I'm sure you're going to be opposed to the oil subsidies as well, right? On that note, he says, we need to get the federal government out of the way. We still have too many attacks against good job producers. Wait, that sounds confusing. You mean get the federal government out of the way in terms of taking away their subsidies? His answer to that is, hell no. No, get out of the way, meaning keep giving them record amounts of subsidies. But that's not getting out of the way. That's the government giving them subsidies. He's like, no. When you attack the oil companies, you're attacking good job creators. Well, but the solar companies create jobs too. In fact, they're creating more jobs. Like, no, giveaway, unbelievable. Okay, now let's talk about those giveaways, right? And let's give you the context here that is enormously important why David Vitter might have this opinion. State lawmakers have handed out about $147 million in solar tax credits since 2009, and state lawmakers have already passed legislation to end those tax credits over the next 2 years. Okay, well now wait a minute. As I told you, that is a big check, $147 million to the good people of Louisiana. Oof, that is a lot of money going to the solar panel industry. Sounds like crony capitalism. Well, let's take a look at oil and gas and see how that turned out. The oil and gas industry, on the other hand, has raked in more than $2.4 billion from Louisiana taxpayers since 2008. I'll do the math for you. There's a 1-year discrepancy there between 2008 and 2009. And when you look at the overall numbers, the oil subsidies compared to the solar subsidies are 14 times larger. Well, David Vitter, if you were interested in attacking crony capitalism and taxpayers' money being taken and given to companies for no reason, wouldn't you go after the much, much larger oil and gas subsidies? Oh, no, you wouldn't. Why? Because you don't give a damn about crony capitalism. In fact, you love crony capitalism because it benefits you. It's actually worse than it appears. So now that number that I read to you was, since 2008, $2.4 billion of Louisiana taxpayer money given to the most profitable companies in the world for no reason other than crony capitalism. Okay, and it's not like, hey, the solar companies, the wind companies, etc., at least they're fledgling industry. You want to build them up in early years. The oil companies have been around over 100 years. Okay, so it's worse. In addition, those oil and gas tax credits could balloon to $1 billion annually with continued growth in the fracking industry, according to some estimates. So it used to be $2.4 billion since 2008. Now that's about 6-7 years, depending on how you're doing the accounting, right? Now it's going to be $1 billion a year, possibly. An enormous, unbelievable giveaway. But David Vitter loves that giveaway. Now, let us explore why that might be the case. Well, it turns out David Vitter has had his campaign funded by, look at this, Koch Industries, which is in the oil and gas business, and Cheniere Energy, also in the oil and gas business. They have given him $1 million. And he was just endorsed by the Louisiana Oil and Gas Political Action Committee. So this is how crony capitalism works. They give $1 million to a guy like David Vitter to protect crony capitalism at its worst. Then they pretend to be against crony capitalism. Charles Koch just went and did an interview with Joe Scarborough on MSNBC saying, I fight against crony capitalism every day. In reality, he buys politicians like David Vitter. He did it in this particular case. He gives them a pittance. $1 million to these guys combined is nothing. In return, they get subsidies that already are $2.5 billion just since 2008. Now, would you do that deal? $1 million you pay to a guy and he gives you $2.5 billion back while pretending to be against crony capitalism and crushing your competition. Taking away the subsidies from solar energy, which is competition to oil and gas industry. You kill them while pretending to be principled, and then you get 14 times more than they do from the Louisiana taxpayers. That's exactly how this scam is run. Charles Koch and Koch Industries aren't against crony capitalism. They are the largest purveyors of crony capitalism. David Vitter is a cog in this system. He's just a useful idiot. These politicians, they'll do anything. You just bribe them a little bit. Now all the bribes have been legalized anyway. The Supreme Court says, bribe away. It's just speech. See the Koch brothers and the other energy company here talk to David Vitter to the tune of $1 million, and then they get the best return on investment you'll ever see. Best thing you can buy in America is a politician. All these guys are deeply corrupt. Don't ever let them tell you that they're against crony capitalism or they're on your side. They're on the side of the guys signing the checks. If you hate that and you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, and I know you do because the polling indicates it. Bloomberg just put out a poll. 83% of Democrats and 80% of Republicans say the money's obviously corrupting the politics. It's the most obvious thing in the world. That's why our politicians are miserable. That's why we can't stand them. That's why congressional approval rating once hit recently 7%. Okay, we can't stand. We know that they're bought. Well, come and feel the power. Join Wolfpack. And let's go get them back. We don't care if you're a Republican. We don't care if you're an independent Democrat. We don't care at all. All we want to do is get our democracy back from the sons of bitches who took it from us. Wolf-pack.com. Come feel the power. Yes, that felt good. Okay, we're back. It's a Monday. Okay, now let me go hit the Democrats. Let's go over to Hillary Clinton and her lackeys. The League of Conservation Voters cares a lot about the environment. They've done some very, very good work there, and I'm sure they have good people over there. They have done something historic. They've decided to endorse Hillary Clinton for the first time ever before the primary. Now, normally they wait till after the primary. Now, look, I take it supposed to be nonpartisan, but in the real world, obviously they're progressive at this point because the Republicans are barbarians, and none of them are interested in doing anything about climate change. If there was a non-barbarian Republican, I'm sure that they would actually consider it, right? But the party has basically eliminated itself when it comes to the issue of the environment by saying we don't give a damn about the environment. We don't believe that it's being affected in any way, shape, or form despite all of the mountains of scientific evidence. So what are they going to do? Wait till they see who the Republican candidate is? No, I don't blame them for that at all. But wait a minute, we haven't had the primary yet. Why are you endorsing Hillary Clinton above someone like Bernie Sanders? Well, here's what they say. Gene Kropinski, he is the Action Fund's president. Hillary Clinton is without a doubt the most effective leader to stand up to big polluters and push forward an aggressive plan to tackle climate change and get it done. Without a doubt, really. Well, turns out Senator Bernie Sanders has a stronger voting record in Congress on this issue than Hillary Clinton does. Well, that's only according to the League of Conservation Voters. Now, wait a minute. That's your group. You say Bernie Sanders is better than Hillary Clinton according to the voting record. But before you even gave anybody a chance to vote, you said no. without a doubt, Hillary Clinton is the best on this issue, despite our own group's voting record and our own group's announcements as to who was actually better, which is Bernie Sanders. So what's going on here? You see, this is the establishment, and this is how it works. I don't doubt that everybody at the League of Conservation Voters are wonderful people. Look, if you're in the business of trying to help the environment, fight off the environment, you're not a bad guy, you're a great guy, right? You're not doing that to get rich. There's not a ton of money in it, right? In terms of the actual people who work there. Now, we've got their faces here. It's Gene Karpinski is the guy that I quoted. And then you've got Carol Browner, who's the board chairwoman there. Now, remember, she served as the Environmental Protection Agency administrator under President Bill Clinton. And this is how politics works, right? Hey, you remember when you scratched my back and made me the head of the EPA, or your husband did? Wouldn't that be nice again? Well, that's part of the equation. And this is their job, right? They're in Washington, and their job is to get back into power, and then, and they would say, to be fair to them, and to effect change. I can't effect change unless I'm back in power, and I can't be back in power unless I'm going to support the person who's most likely to win, Hillary Clinton. But there is a second element. Now, all these groups in Washington, whether they're conservative, and almost all the conservative groups are this way, or they're progressive groups, well, they need money, right? It's not like they're billionaires. These are good people working hard for not great salaries, just middle-of-the-road salaries, right? I imagine. But somehow the League of Conservation Voters does have a lot of money. The League of Conservation Voters spent $30 million in the 2014 election, a record amount for the group. Now, wait a minute. How in the world did they get $30 million? Well, some of it is from small donors, I'm sure of that, right? They put out emails saying, hey, if you care about the environment, and good people who really do give them money, and for good reason, they're not a bad group. I don't want you to misunderstand me, okay? But I am also sure that some of that $30 million came from very large donors. And the very large donors are almost all on Hillary Clinton's side. So now if the League of Conservation Voters would like to have a budget as large as they do to be able to spend that kind of money, well, then you would probably want to do whatever your donors tell you to do. And again, I'm using them as an example, but their donors are perfectly great people, I imagine, because they actually care about saving the environment. So I'm not saying they're bad guys. I'm just telling you how the system works. If you look at this and you go, an environmental group that has said for all these years Bernie Sanders' voting record is better, then comes out and supports Hillary Clinton. Gee, why? Well, that's my job to break it down for you and explain why. They're not bad people, but the results they reach are based, honestly, partly on politics, and partly on who's funding them. And it turns out the establishment, unsurprisingly, is on Hillary Clinton's side. Now, you do with that whatever you like, but that is the reality. Otherwise, they most certainly would have waited to see what happens in the primaries before they jumped in and said, Hillary, definitely, without a doubt, it is Hillary Clinton. Right? Definitely, without a doubt, Hillary Clinton. All right, now you know. Okay. When we come back, buckle up. Dr. Ben Carson. Bad things are going to happen to him. You know what's going to happen to him when we come back? The truth.
We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're going to help us run the country.
Like this.
It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
We had a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us. Whoa! Democracy!
United!
We are!
We are!
Too strong! Stop this. There's thousands of volunteers, and you can be among them.
With Wolfpack, the mission is so clear.
Money is killing our democracy. 96% of Americans want it. When you get the power back, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Let's go get them, man. Up and at 'em. Knock, knock. We're coming for them! Wolf-pack.com. couple of quick tweets for you guys. Annette asks, yes, the person who up until recently supported the TPP in the pipeline, that's Hillary Clinton, that's the person we should trust with the environment. Interesting point. You might want to take that up with LCB. Okay, Smooth asks, did Jen get a haircut? JR, did you set him up with a good barber? Okay, answer number one, yes, I did get a haircut over the weekend. Thank you for noticing. No, it wasn't JR. I found a barber right down the street from me that's been in business there for 30 years, and I was like, let me give this brother man a try. Okay, and I did. It's also Mediterranean, turns out to be half Italian, half Greek, and he gave me a nice haircut, I think. What do you think? Not bad, okay. We'll live with it. Thank you. Alright, now, on to real stuff. Chris Bradshaw. War, oppression, civil rights violations, and sectarian violence. But all I care about is the oil. I don't get why they hate us. Hey, Chris, remember, they hate us because they hate us. And then finally, D. Bell writes in, Vitter wants to fuck the taxpayers like he fucks his prostitutes. Well, this time he's taking the diaper off. Okay. Now, by the way, Edwin was asking me during the break, who runs the stage here right now, hey, what happened, like, Vitter's back? Like, you might have thought because of all those sex scandals that he was out. He was never out. No, he's like, yeah, I fuck prostitutes. Yeah, I ran my campaign on family values. Hashtag suck it. And conservatives in Louisiana were like, oh, goddamn right, he found Jesus right after he found the hookers. Okay. And right now, he's running his campaign. I know you can't believe this, but he's running his campaign on family values after he fucked them and admitted to it. Because he figures, who gives a shit? I can do anything, man. I can fuck their wives, and they still vote for me. Okay. Alright. Anyways, now, let's go on to Ben Carson. Now, Ben Carson is a guy who's been getting a lot of attention for some possible prevarications, to be polite, in his past. Another word for that is he's been lying about a ton of things. Now, I'm going to show you a lot of those lies right now, so buckle up. First, I want to go to people who think it's unfair. Obviously, the Republicans think it's unfair to go into his past. They view any question to be a gotcha question. Yeah, well, if the guy said he got a full scholarship to West Point and it turns out he didn't, gotcha, you lied about that. That's relevant. But it's not just Republicans. Bernie Sanders doesn't love it either. He said, I think it might be a better idea. I know it's a crazy idea, but maybe we can focus on the issues impacting the American people and what candidates are saying rather than just spending so much time exploring their lives of 30 or 40 years ago. I don't agree, and I'll tell you why. So, don't get me wrong, should we spend time on his policies? Of course! And I've already shown you his tax plan and why it's preposterous and how much it's going to help the rich. Okay, so we do plenty of that. But at the same time, we have to know who we're electing. It's the most important job on the planet. They can unilaterally start wars with other countries. What do they believe? And what this guy believes is partly based on his interpretation of Seventh-day Adventists. Jesus, Lord mercy, I don't know what that means he believes, right? And what the policy implications of that are. But also, are you a person we can trust? Well, then the question of whether you've been lying your whole life is very relevant. So to me, the interesting part isn't necessarily the lies themselves, although they are whoppers, as you're about to see. But remember, Donald Trump lies over and over again. I mean, he's a pathological liar, so it's not like this is something new to politicians. My God, the politicians do it endlessly, right? But in his particular case, the question is, why did he make up the lies that he did? That's the most important part, and that's what we'll get to tonight. So, first, let me go back to the beginning. In the beginning, his classmates described him this way. Now, he claims he was violent. I'll tell you why he claims that in a second. But his classmates, when he was growing up in elementary school, junior high, high school, said, no. You almost always wore one of those little pocket protectors, carried around a briefcase, even in high school and college, like a little brown briefcase. Very studious, quiet guy. And Thomas Noonan, who was his former roommate in college, said he would go to bed at like 9 p.m. and we'd get up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., put on a suit, a tie, and a jacket, and a button-down shirt, and study in the early morning. Now, there's no shame in that. That is a great story. So here's a kid who came out of Detroit, got into Yale, doesn't party like everybody else in college. Yes, some at the time might call him a nerd, a dork, whatever you want to call him. He gets up in the morning, puts on a button-down shirt, and goes to work. That's something to be greatly admired. There's nothing wrong with that story. That story is fantastic. But he didn't go with that story. He went with a different story. And why he went with a different story is the interesting part. Now, part of it has to do with religion. He's got to go get both religious voters, and remember, he's been trying to sell books for 30 years now, right? One book after another about how great he is. He called one of his books Gifted Hands. That's his autobiography. Who says about themselves gifted hands? It's like if I did an autobiography and I called it Gifted Mouth, which I believe could have other implications, or Gifted Tongue, other than the fact that it might be a little misleading. It's preposterous! Who says that about themselves? This guy's been running a marketing campaign about his career for decades. Now, part of that story is, when I first started, I was a young black kid who was poor, violent, although there's no evidence of that, but he has to build that story, and even dumb. But you know who saved me? Jesus. So now there are pictures of him, of Jesus and Bibles, etc., all over his house. But in 2009, in his Maryland house, when a reporter came in, they noticed this picture, which was up in the Guardian. People are now calling that Black Klingon Jesus. I don't know why he decided to have a self-portrait made with Black Klingon Jesus, but I do know it's something to do with, I'm not sure he intended him to be black or Klingon, but the idea is, this is my Jesus buddy. I'm with Jesus. It's a literal representation of his marketing campaign. And don't get me wrong, I'm with Jesus. Now, the first set of lies he got caught on was this idea that he had this violent past. Now, CNN went back and checked, so many media organizations have checked, and all these guys who were his supporters, who were his friends, they're like, hey, look, I believe Ben. If he says he had a violent past, I believe him. But we never heard about it. I think we would have heard about it in school. I think we would have heard about it as friends. We never heard about it, right? So he claims he went after his mom with a hammer. And that is pretty violent. Nobody in his family can attest to that. We ask, hey, can we talk to your brother? You say in your story that your brother's the one that held you back and made sure you didn't hit your mom with a hammer. Mysteriously, the brother doesn't want to talk about it. Can we talk to your mom? No, she's got Alzheimer's, so don't talk to her. Okay. Can we talk to anybody about how you're going to go after your mom with a hammer? Nope. Okay, and then he claims he had many other instances. He attacked some kid with a lock and put a 3-inch gash on his head. There are no school records of that. He can't name the kids. And then he attempted to, among many others, stab another guy, but the blade broke off when he hit his gigantic buckle belt. I thought they were from Detroit, not from Texas. Okay, that is a preposterous story. Anyone who has ever lied before, and any single guy out there, you know who I'm talking about. Okay. You know that's a ridiculous lie. Really, he had a giant buckle belt, and the blade broke off. What a stroke of luck, right? Not reported anywhere, not in any school records. He said, oh, they were guys named Bob and Jerry. Turns out when they look through the records, there's not even a Bob or a Jerry. They can reach out to any Bob or Jerry that might have been in any school with him. They say, no, absolutely not. That never happened. So he says, oh, no, I made up those names. In fact, let me tell you. I don't like to generally bring them in. The names I use, for instance, are fictitious names because I don't want to bring people into something like this because I know what you guys do to their lives. In other words, there are no such people. Oh, please, you're running for president of the United States. You're taking all this heat, and now you're telling me, oh, yeah, I made up the names of the people that I pretended to stab, etc. But trust me that they exist. And even though they're my friends now, or in the case of the stabbing, he claims that it was a relative. Even though that relative could save my presidential campaign, I won't bring him forward. It's to protect him. No, all he would have to do is, Ben came, we were 14 years old, we had a disagreement, he did this crazy thing, and I can't believe it hit my buckle belt. I forgave him decades ago, it's okay. That's all, that's it, nobody's going to pick that apart. Just produce the guy, right? You can't produce him because he doesn't exist, because you're a pathological liar, okay? Now, the second point was, hey, West Point, I was in ROTC, he was, right? And then I was so decorated that I had all these people come over, including General Westmoreland, huge general back in the day, and they offered me a full scholarship to West Point. Now, it turns out there are no scholarships to West Point. If you get accepted, it's free. General Westmoreland wasn't there on the day that Ben Carson describes. And it turns out he never even applied to West Point. Now, of course, people are jumping in. Liberal media. They're painting it like he said he got a full scholarship to West Point. Well, that's not exactly what he said. Really? Let's go to tape and find out.
That really inspired me to get into ROTC and to really work very hard. And, fortunately, I became the city executive officer. I had a chance to meet General Westmoreland and go to Congressional Medal of Honor dinners and was offered a full scholarship to West Point and have always had deep affection for the military.
A full scholarship to West Point. I mean, dude, before you lie, just look it up. Look to see if they have full scholarships. He claims that at the dinner, they're like, oh, would you like a full scholarship? And so he technically didn't apply, but he was offered the scholarship. That's not how it works. They don't go to dinner and be like, hey, before you apply to West Point, here, you're already admitted before you applied, and you have a full scholarship. That doesn't exist. Guy lies. That's what he does. That's all of this marketing, all the campaigns, all the gifted hands, everything is one giant lie. I'm not anywhere near done. Then there's a story about when he's in Yale and the professor comes and does this study, okay? And it turns out he's the only honest guy at Yale. Come on, he didn't really say that, right? Well, let's go to Dr. Ben Carson's actual words. The professor came toward me. With her was a photographer for the Yale Daily News, who paused and snapped my picture. A hoax, the teacher said. We wanted to see who was the most honest student in the class. What's he describing here? He said that he went to this class called Perceptions 301. And they were told that they had taken this final, but that the final had been lost. And then they were all going to get a new final, 150 kids in the class. And the new final was twice as hard as the old final. And so the other students were so mad, and they walked out. But not Ben Carson, because he's the only honest guy at Yale. And it turns out it was a study to find the only honest guy at Yale. He stood there and he took the test anyway. Out of 150 people, he's the only one to take a final once the professor's told him, right? Well, of course, what are you going to do? You're going to look into this amazing story, right? And when the Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch and News Corp, so no liberal publication, says no photo identifying Mr. Carson as a student ever ran, according to the Yale Daily News Archives, so that picture story is total crock, and no stories from that era mention a class called Perceptions 301. He even made up the class. I'll show you where he got that from in a second. Yale librarian Clarence Spy said Friday there was no psychology course by that name or class number during any of Mr. Carson's years at Yale. Never took that class. There was no such final. So where the hell did he get this crazy idea? It turns out, back then, the Yale Daily News ran a parody. I know that because it's labeled parody on the top of it. Here, let's show it to you. And now Kevin Drum at Mother Jones found this, among others. It says parody, and then it explains strictly off the record, a story where a psychology class is told that the exams were taken away and that it was... in fact, they were asked to take the exam again, but it was proven to be a hoax, yada, yada. He took a parody from the student paper, pretended it was real, and then pretended it showed him as the only honest person in that class. Now, I would call that ironic, because that's about as dishonest a thing you could do. The whole point of that story is, I'm the only honest one. Everyone else, my critics, everybody else, they're all liars. Liberal media, this, that. But I'm a pure soul. Okay, so that is a number of lies so far, but we're not anywhere done yet. It turns out, and again, this is where it gets interesting as to why he's lying. He told a story about his chemistry class. So he gets a scholarship to go to Yale, so obviously he's done very well. He gets to Yale and finds out that he's unprepared, especially for chemistry, and this is what happens.
And we were right there the day before the final, and my grades were so bad that even if I'd gotten an A on the final, I still would have failed. That's how bad it was. So there I was, night before, thinking about my life. I said, Lord, medicine is the only thing I ever wanted to do. I always thought that's what you wanted for me. And yet, it looks like I'm going to fail chemistry. I'm not going to go to medical school. I said, so would you please tell me what it is you really want me to do? Or alternatively and preferably, work a miracle. And I picked up that big chemistry book. I was going to learn the whole thing that night. And of course, I fell asleep. Dreamed I was in this large auditorium, just me, and a nebulous figure working out chemistry problems. And I awakened early in the morning. That dream was so vivid in my mind. I picked up my book. I started looking up the stuff that I dreamed about. And when I went to take the test the next morning, it was like the Twilight Zone. I opened that book and I recognized the first problem. It was one of the ones I dreamed about. And the next, and the next, and the next. And I aced the exam. And, got a good mark in chemistry. It worked out okay. But,
You're telling me an angel taught you chemistry in your sleep, and you went from an F, not knowing anything about chemistry, trying to pick up the book in the first place. By the way, you might have wanted to pick up the book earlier. To getting what you know what he got on that test? A 97. No, that's not what happened. And anyone who went to school knows that's not what happened. Look, I'm not begrudging him his miracle stories. I know religious people feel this way. So, for example, there's another story where he gets in a car accident. The car spins around and around. They're almost going to go off a cliff. That part is probably not true. But anyway, I'm sure that their car spilled out, and his future wife was in the car, Candy Carson. They're not married at the time. They're both going to Yale. They both go back to Detroit to teach people how to get into Yale. That's great, and I love them for it. And the car spins out, but they don't die. They both decide it's a miracle and that God has saved them for a very specific purpose. Okay, a lot of people believe that. Of course, me being agnostic, I'd say, why did God cause the accident in the first place? Okay, but I don't begrudge him that. That's not one of the lies. I don't care about that, right? So, but in this case, with the chemistry and the mysterious angel in your sleep, that's bullshit. That didn't happen. And much more interestingly, though, is why tell that story? Isn't it a better story if you studied? You're a kid out of Detroit. You were poor. You studied hard. You got up at 4 in the morning every day. You wore your button-down shirt, and you studied chemistry. And you learned chemistry so well, you got a 97 on your final at Yale. Isn't that a better story? No, but that doesn't fit the narrative that the people buying his books, the evangelical base that he's appealing to, and Republican voters want to hear. They don't want to hear that story. Here's the story they want to hear. You were a violent black kid, going around stabbing people, hammering your own mom, or trying to. And you were also dumb. You were failing chemistry. Of course, dumb. And then through the miracle of Jesus Christ, you were saved. And since you gave your life over to Jesus, then he gave you gifted hands. He sent you an angel to give you a miracle, to get you the 97 on the chemistry exam. And now, it's the white man's dream. A dumb, violent black kid turned into a perfectly docile, good member of society who tells them all the time, by the way, white people are right and black people's culture is wrong. And all of that is because of Jesus. Perfect. Now that's a story that sells books. That's a story that's much, much worse than the truth. But it sells books and it gets Republican voters. To this day, Ben Carson argues for the Confederate flag. He says the Confederate flag should be flown at NASCAR races. Ooh, that story sells. That's exactly what people want to hear, especially Republican voters. Of course, not all white people, but the people who buy his books, the people who might vote for him. That's the story they want to hear from a black surgeon. Okay? Now, if you're not convinced that there are more lies ahead, I mean, I don't know that this is enough. You're not convinced about why he's lying. All right, let's go to one more lie. Now, this is about when MLK is shot. Now, everybody on campus, of course, is greatly affected by this. And an African-American community is greatly affected that Martin Luther King has been shot. But Mr. Carson has an interesting view of what happened on that particular day. Let's hear about it.
You know, that day is still so vivid in my memory. The black students were incredibly angry. And many of them were going around in groups looking for any white person they could find and just beating the tar out of them. And, I was very concerned. And I happened to be the lab assistant, biology lab assistant. I had a key to the lab, so, I was getting white students into the lab and locking the lab so that they could hide until the whole thing was over. In no way was I at a point where I was ready to blame all white people for that.
So now he's made himself into the Oskar Schindler for white people. Oh, all the savages, the violent blacks, they were coming to get the white people. And who was the only honest man at Yale? The one guy who could save all the good white folks. It was Ben Carson. Now, Wall Street Journal looked into this as well. Quote, it couldn't be confirmed in interviews with half a dozen of Mr. Carson's classmates and his high school physics teacher. The students all remembered the riot. None recalled hearing about white students hiding in the biology lab, and Mr. Carson couldn't remember any names of those he sheltered. See, it's all part of the same narrative. Those of you who are racist among white voters and book buyers, and people who pay me for my speeches, have I got the perfect speech for you? Have I got the perfect story for you? All of your biases and stereotypes, I can confirm them. That's exactly how all black people are. But don't worry, I'm here to save you. And I'm here to save them. I'll find them black Klingon Jesus. I'll bring him along. And together, we'll show you that if only they listen to you, then their culture could be fixed. But until then, don't worry. If they get out of hand, I'll protect them. See, they are weird lies if you don't understand the narrative he's trying to sell. When you understand the narrative he's trying to sell, well, then that makes a lot of sense. So now, finally, let's go back to that moment when he pretends that he stabs somebody. He's 14 years old. He goes into a bathroom for 3 hours. He says, grabs the Bible, starts reading it, and that's his conversion moment, right? And that's when he said that he was looking for answers. I want to go to that to understand a bit of his psychology.
I just prayed and I said, Lord, I can't control this. I've tried. By that time, I was already in Psychology Today. I was already learning about personality disorders and behavior disturbances, and I knew that I had one. And I was reading about behavioral modification techniques, and I knew that they cost a lot of money. I knew I didn't have enough money to go to a psychotherapist. We didn't have any money for anything. And I said, Lord, you're going to have to be my psychotherapist, because I can't go on like this. And I just turned it over to him. And I said, if you want me to do something in life, you're going to have to fix this. If not, I'll just go on like this. But I'll tell you right now, I can't do it.
Well, he definitely did have some sort of personality disorder. Was it fixed by God in that bathroom? I tend to doubt it, right? So that begins to give you a glimpse into his mind. By the way, at 14 years old, what is it that he was actually going to try to stick another male with that bounced off his belt? Okay, that would have somebody sit in a bathroom for 3 hours asking, who am I? Who am I? God, what's your plan for me? I'm so confused. I don't know. Finally, let me go to Ben Carson's story about Joseph in the Bible. This is a guy he quotes often. This is the guy he says that built the pyramids to store grain, a story that is nowhere near true, completely non-factual. Archaeologists said it's, quote, a lunatic theory, right? He had another story about Joseph. Listen in here and see if it is instructive in any way.
I think back on Joseph, one of my favorite Bible characters. Now, Joseph's big thinking got him into a little trouble. That big thinking of his, look where it got him. He ended up being sold into slavery. But did that dampen his thinking? In no way. He said, if I'm going to be in prison, I'm going to be the best prisoner they ever saw. And he ended up in charge of the prison. I mean, that was pretty big thinking. And before that, of course, as a slave in Potiphar's household, he said, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to be the best slave. And he ended up running the household. And of course, he ended up as prime minister of the most powerful nation in the world at that time.
I'm not saying anything. I'm going to quote again what he just said there. If I'm going to be a slave, I'm going to be the best slave, and I'm going to wind up running. One to grow on. Okay, we'll be right back, and I've got that legendary Fox News cat fight. Come right back. Now, this cat fight at Fox News is as good as it gets. It's George Will versus Bill O'Reilly. So Bill O'Reilly's written this book called Killing Reagan. Inside it, he has a very controversial and preposterous theory. I'll explain what this fight's really about at some point in this story. But for the moment being, what you have to know is that George Will first strikes out against the book because he views it as anti-Reagan. Right? Because in the book, Bill O'Reilly suggests that after Ronald Reagan was shot, remember the assassination attempt, obviously he survived, but that started causing early Alzheimer's and caused him to do all these things he shouldn't have done. Ooh, drums. Why does Bill say that again? I'll explain that at the end. But that's his theory for all the things that Reagan did wrong. Now, George Will loves Reagan, doesn't believe Reagan's done anything wrong, and he's like, how dare you? So he does an op-ed in the Washington Post, and he ends it by saying, caution, you're about to enter a no-fact zone. Damn drums! No, he didn't. So now Bill O'Reilly is not going to like that, right? They're both working at Fox News Channel. Bill O'Reilly's Papa Bear. You don't talk to Bill O'Reilly about that like that, especially because his whole O'Reilly factor is the no spin zone. For you to do that, say it's the no fact. Oh, that's his brand you're messing with. So O'Reilly goes on the air and attacks.
George Will wrote a column entitled Bill O'Reilly Slanders Ronald Reagan. But it is his column that is a libel, Will's column. Slander is a spoken word. George A libel is a written word. I'm sure you know that. George Will regurgitates attacks on the book from Reagan loyalists who tried to get Killing Reagan spiked even before it was published because they wanted a deification of the president, not an honest look at him. Will never called me, even though it's not direct dial. I mean, he could just punch up a little extension and there I am because he works for Fox News. But even so, we harbor no ill will, pun intended, and have invited George on the factor to... We'll see if he has the courage factor. Place your bets now.
Oh, that pun. In the name of all puns, I withdraw your license to commit an act of punditry. Was that a pun within a pun? We're getting meta here. Okay, so anyway, on to the core of the issue. So George Will, it turns out, does have enough courage to take on Bill O'Reilly. He's going to go on his show. They taped the show, but before it airs, George Will goes on another Fox News show and says this.
All right, winners and losers, George. And the loser of the week is Bill O'Reilly of Fox News, whose book called Killing Reagan is being eviscerated by real historians and by almost everyone who worked and knew Ronald Reagan. Viewers might want to see his response to my criticism on the segment we taped for his show tonight that is so unhinged as to be highly amusing.
So that goes to prove how much autonomy is given panelists on the winners and losers. Okay.
Now, Brett Baer mentions autonomy there because that apparently was not pre-approved. See, at Fox News, you actually don't have much autonomy. If he had asked for approval before saying that, well, they probably would have been like, hey, now we don't attack our fellow host here. By the way, that's not exclusive to Fox News. When I was on MSNBC, I was told not to attack other hosts. So keep it real, okay? But attack they did. Because now we go to the videotape of the actual show itself. Now, let's start with some fun.
Columnist George Will also works here at the Fox News channel, wrote a column entitled Bill O'Reilly Slanders Ronald Reagan. After reading the column, I can say with certainty, George Will libels Bill O'Reilly. Fox News Hard News chief, Mike Clemente, told us that you told him you would call me before the column was published. Did you call me?
No, and I didn't promise to call you. You have my phone number, and if you wanted to call me...
I couldn't care less about it. I didn't know what you were doing. Now, are you calling Mr. Clemente a liar?
No, I'm not. I'm saying either you've got it wrong. It would not be the first time you got something wrong.
Okay, I have it in writing. I have it in writing from Mr. Clemente. So you're either saying, Mr. Clemente, I'm not saying anything. I'm saying that our Hard News chief said that you told him you would call me. Are you denying that tonight?
Do you want to talk about Bill Riley or about Bill Riley?
Okay, my name is O'Reilly. Do you want to deny that Clemente? Do you want to say that he's not telling the truth?
I'm saying there was a misunderstanding. He said that Mr. Clemente is a tremendously honest man.
Okay, good, because we have it in writing that you were supposed to call me, and you did not call me. And by writing a provocative column like this, you had an obligation as a journalist to do that.
Okay, now you might be wondering, wait a minute, but they're not talking about Reagan at all. Why are they talking about a hilariously named Hard News chief at Fox News Channel? How hard is he? Anyway, the reason O'Reilly brings up Michael Clemente is because he is threatening George Will's job. What he just did there in the beginning of the interview is, don't forget, I'm Papa Bear. I got 3 million viewers a night. I'm the highest rated show here. I'll get your ass fired. I'll talk about our chief here. And if you say that he wasn't telling the truth, well, then you're going to get dismissed right away. It's going to be a good excuse to fire you. So what are you saying about Michael Clemente? You see the power move that he's doing? That's so that George Will know for the rest of the debate, know your role and bow your head. Now, it didn't work. He didn't do any of that. So more fun ensues. That's why.
Okay, here's a quote from Michael Deaver, all right? After a day and a half of briefings, but without seeing the president, they delivered to Baker a stunning report. He would have to be prepared at any time to invoke the 25th Amendment, which would remove a president if he was unfit to serve. The president had concluded, was on the brink of being physically and mentally incapable of carrying out his responsibilities, unquote. Michael Deaver, behind the scenes, that's a quote in his book. Do you deny that happened?
The memo was presented to Howard Baker, who commissioned it.
Deal with Deaver, his friend, his close friend, as you just described. Deal with that. Explain that.
The memo was presented to Howard Baker. Howard Baker took one look at it and said to the man who wrote it, "This is not the Ronald Reagan I know," and that was the end.
That was not the end of it. You're not telling the truth. You are actively misleading the American people. You are
You're
lying.
something of an expert on actively misleading
You
people.
are lying.
Damn, you're somewhat of an expert on misleading people. That's what George Will just fired back at Bill O'Reilly on Fox News. See, now this is really interesting because this is what they usually do to other people. They do it to liberals, they do it to Democrats. But now you've got Fox on Fox crime, and neither one is backing down. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll smear you." So what? I've been smearing people for decades. I'll smear you. So the smears are flying left and right. And then again, I'll tell you who's right. Let's watch.
You who began this interview by saying I had a moral obligation to call you before writing about your book, wrote a book without feeling any obligation to talk to Ed Meese, George Schultz, Jim Baker, any of the other people who could have.
And why did I not talk to them?
Because they would have refuted the flimsy thesis.
Because they have skin in the game. We don't talk to people when we're writing our books.
You mean they not? They have knowledge of the game.
They have skin in the game, emotion in the game, spin in the game. We don't talk to anybody who was derogatory to the Reagans or anybody who was laudatory. We do our own investigation. And Killing Reagan is a laudatory book toward Ronald Reagan, and you didn't even mention that.
It is not a laudatory book.
It is a laudatory book, or you can't read.
It is doing the work of the left, which knows that in order to discredit conservatism, it must destroy Reagan's reputation as a president. And your book does the work of the American left with its extreme recklessness.
Wow, he just called him a liberal. I didn't know it was going to get this dirty. Okay. Oh, O'Reilly's not going to take that sitting down. I think come at him one more time, Papa Bear.
Here's the deal. That memo was written. That meeting took place. All of what we write in Killing Reagan is true. You're a hack. You're in with the cabal of the Reagan loyalists who don't want the truth to be told. Killing Reagan is a laudatory book. It praises Ronald Reagan. Yet you didn't call me when you said you would. That's a fact.
Why do Reagan loyalists not want this laudatory book?
Because they wanted a deification. They wanted a deification. They tried to get the book killed before it was even published. And you play right into the hands.
That, by the way, is a lie.
That isn't a lie, and we can prove it, and you are a hack.
Do so. Do so, Mr. O'Reilly.
You are a hack. Okay. Part of a cabal. You know O'Reilly's worked up when he starts pronouncing words like that. Cabal. Okay, so who's right, who's wrong? So George Will is largely right about the details, but wrong about the big picture. So let me explain. So he says, wait a minute, you're complaining that I didn't call you before I wrote my Washington Post piece, but you didn't call anybody that was in the Reagan administration before writing a book about the Reagan administration. So that is enormously fair charge from George Will to O'Reilly, and O'Reilly says, well, I didn't want to talk to anybody who was laudatory of Reagan because they have skin in the game. I also didn't want to talk to any critics. So who the hell did you talk to? And it turns out when you look at the footnotes, not very many people. So they have a lot of footnotes, but the footnotes are comical. There's only one source. Everything else is, we went to libraries. Which libraries? And then George Will went and looked it up. It turns out you have to sign into those libraries, like the Reagan Library, to get research material if you're a researcher. O'Reilly didn't sign in, and his book writer, by the way, he doesn't write his own books. You have to know that. He sits down with a guy, and he says, Dad, this is what I think about Reagan. And so, okay, write that down, okay? And then they just write that. They write these books in about a year. And if you know the book business, that is actually a very short amount of time. How are you going to do all of that research, prove out your thesis, and write the book, and get it published in under a year? You do that if you don't actually do any research, right? So what was O'Reilly's crazy, or as George Will says, flimsy theory? Theory was, as I mentioned in the beginning, Reagan gets shot, and he thinks, oh, that's what gets him to spin into this early Alzheimer's. There's this memo from Deaver saying he's worried about him because he's, not paying attention at meetings. He's spending some days at a time, upstairs in the West Wing, watching soap opera. Now, some of that is corroborated, right? Then there's some weird sex theories about him, and that Nancy Reagan is actually in charge. I don't know. Okay. Now, did that all stem from the bullet that he took during the assassination attempt? No. Now, there's no medical proof of that. That's just, this is pulp. O'Reilly does all these books killing Lincoln, killing JFK, and he just finds like this little angle where his ignorant audience will go, oh yeah, that's a really good theory. Yeah, man, the bullet, and then it travels through the blood, and that's what started the Alzheimer's. But wait a minute, he got shot 70 days into his term, and then there was 2,853 days, I think, after that, right? So are you saying everything Reagan did was because he was mentally ill? Now that gets to the macro point. You see, the reason that he's writing this book, part of the reason is he needs to excuse all the things that Reagan did. Because right now, it doesn't make any sense to Republicans. If they bother looking into what Reagan did, what did he do? He did amnesty for illegal immigrants, the thing that Republicans say they hate the most. Reagan did it. He did it. And it wasn't like, pathway to citizenship and this and that. No, it was just amnesty, okay? Don't negotiate with terrorists. Reagan negotiated with terrorists. He sold them weapons. Whatever you do, don't do a peace deal with Iran. Reagan negotiated and did a deal with Iran. Sold them weapons, okay? So Reagan did all the things that Republicans claim to hate. Lebanon, whatever you do, we don't cut and run. These colors don't run. In Lebanon, over 280 American Marines killed, and Americans killed overall. What did Reagan do? He cut and run. He got the hell out of there. I'm not saying that was the wrong move, but it's certainly not the conservative position today. So O'Reilly has to write a whole book with this insane theory to try to justify all the things that Reagan did that today would get him booted out of a Democratic primary, let alone a Republican primary. He couldn't be elected Republican dog catcher anywhere in the country with that kind of record. That's why he has to concoct this insane theory. Oh, yeah, he's a great conservative except the blood and the bullet and the Alzheimer's and Nancy Reagan and the soap operas. Otherwise, he would have been a true conservative like we told you. Now, George Will hates that kind of talk because he's the number one guy who's been pushing Reagan as a demigod. Reagan is the best president we've ever had. Everything he did is right. But hey, wait a minute. You're against amnesty? He did amnesty. Shut up. You're a hack. You're a liar. Shut up. You didn't talk to any Reagan loyalists. So, the book is nonsense. George Will's criticism of the book is largely correct. But at the end of the day, George Will is more wrong than Bill O'Reilly. Because Reagan did do all those things. I mean, let alone, he cut taxes, but then he increased taxes. I can go on all day long with all the things that Reagan did. That would be an immediate disqualifier for any Republican today. So on that, George Will is massively wrong. He did do those things. The Republican Party has gone off a deep ledge. They're far more right-wing than even Reagan ever used to be. And right now, they would kick him and they would tar and feather him and kick him out of the Republican Party if he was around today with his policies. And George Will wants to hide that desperately. And if even O'Reilly's ridiculous book exposed that in any way, that's why he gets mad, and he's willing to risk his job at Fox News to go attack Bill O'Reilly over. So I suppose at the end of the day, it's a split decision. They're both wrong. I suppose that's also unsurprising for different reasons, although I would say that George Will is the one trying to cover up the larger fact. Am I ruling in favor of Bill O'Reilly here? Maybe almost the most ironic way possible. But that's the reality. Young Turks.
Damn it, they failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong. Because you should be angry. Young Turks.
It was genuine. He was mad.
Jake Uger, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
I just remember thinking, what is this guy's name?
Jake the Turk Uger.
I think a TV station here says.
The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It's right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website that's speaking truth to power. We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world.
We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
We're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
And Phil and host beat CNN headline news goodbye.
At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a long lesson. Shut up.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can support him. He says to me, "You won't believe the meeting that I just had."
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
They want him off the air. Cenk took an incredible risk. We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it? I wouldn't have done what you did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, it'd be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it. series. Anna and I are here to do the second hour. I've got to read your tweets because there's some great ones in here, especially about O'Reilly in a second. First, Jenny Dennis Saxena writes in, Carson saying he doesn't recall Obama undergoing this much scrutiny just proves how bad his memory is. No wonder he forgot his life. Okay, nicely done, Jenny. So, yeah, I'd give Jenny a t-shirt. Let's go crazy. I haven't given a t-shirt.
Yeah, you've been stingy lately.
Yeah, so that I had a whole set of stuff I didn't use on Ben Carson. I had a whole show worth of stuff that I didn't use on Ben Carson. One of them was him talking about he went on like a minute and a half rant. You guys never asked about Obama's transcripts.
Yes.
And transcript at Occidental is sealed. You never asked about why it's sealed. Why is it sealed? That's because it wasn't sealed. Oops.
He's such a clown, man. It's unbelievable.
He is. He just took that from like an online, trolling, meme.
Yes.
And thought it was real because that's all the conservatives ever base anything on.
He'd make a great president.
Yeah.
No, but think about how twisted our country is right now, where someone is going to suffer because he didn't actually stab someone from his childhood.
I know. It's
Isn't that
amazing.
so
Well,
weird?
Huckabee said that. He's like, I didn't stab anyone. Does that make me a bad candidate or something like that? Then Michael Gibb with another great point. Since Ben Carson has no history in politics, his personal life is all there is to vet. There's nothing else.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, I honestly hadn't thought of that. Well, what else can we vet? If he's not a politician, has no political career, is he saying you can't vet me at all, period? Can't go to my personal life? I wrote 6 books about it, but you can't vet the books?
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Right.
Give Michael Gibb a t-shirt. Damn it. Okay.
I just love how he thinks that he's special. Like, this doesn't happen with every other candidate. Like, he's somehow a target. No, that's what happens when someone's running for president of the United States. Kind of want to figure out who this candidate is and whether or not they'd make a good president.
Exactly. Stephen O. writes in, the audio guy's back. All these Ben Carson lies started with a Popeye's chicken story. Anna immediately called bullshit Buddha.
That's a thing people do, right? Like they
kind of. I think you pop your collar and brush off your shoulder.
Yeah. I'm so bad.
You popped your shoulder. Okay, while we were trying to give you kudos. Anyway, Anna gets a t-shirt.
I have so many of them. Please don't give me another one.
We're not going to say that. You're not supposed to say that. ShopTYT.com. That's where you get the t-shirts. Anyway, so that was a nice Mankiewicz-like call on your part on the Popeye story.
Yeah.
Which then unraveled everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore PD said there's no recorded evidence of any kind of robbery at a Popeyes at that time anywhere near what he said. Okay. Finally, on the issue of Ben Carson, JB Grateful writes in, Jenk, I appreciate you calling this guy out. Hashtag Ben Carson. The only reason I read that is because Grateful is in his Twitter title, and he was grateful for us calling out Ben Carson.
Well, there you
have
it.
I thought was perfectly appropriate.
Yes.
Okay. Now on to Trump real quick. Yeshua Espila says, Bill O'Reilly is trying to sound like an intellect. Adorable, isn't it? Bill, how do the tides work again? I can't remember. I LOL'd when I read that. Nice job, Yeshua. And he's thinking, what? No t-shirt? T-shirt for Yeshua! Man, I'm going crazy today. Ray for Madness. O'Reilly has a picture of him and Klingon Reagan hanging in his office. Another, what I call LLOL. Okay? Literally laughing out loud. Rudy, t-shirt. No, Rudy's going to get one too. Rafer, t-shirt. Finally, Rudy, O'Reilly writing books is killing literature. Okay, get it? Because he does all the killing series, killing Reagan, killing JFK. Clever Rudy! Everybody gets a t-shirt today! Okay, I feel like Oprah. Okay, for everyone else, ShopTYT.com is how you get a t-shirt too, right now. Okay, alright, God bless. Let's go forward.
The president and the chancellor at the University of Missouri have both stepped down amid allegations that there is racial harassment on the campus, but these administrators did absolutely nothing about it. Now, this all started when a student by the name of Jonathan Butler took part in a hunger strike. It was an 8-day hunger strike, and it didn't seem like anything was going to change until the school's football team said that they were going to strike. As soon as they said that, all of a sudden, the president, Tim Wolf, step down from his position. Now, the frustration and anger that I see is clear, real, and I don't doubt it for a second. Please, please use this resignation to heal, not to hate, and let's move on together for a brighter tomorrow. Tim Wolf continues to say, this is not, I repeat, not how change should come about. I disagree. I take full responsibility for the inaction, and I take full responsibility for the frustration that has occurred.
So there's a lot more to the story, but we're going to come back to Tim Wolf and whether he should have stepped down and whether he did the right thing or not in a minute. And I think that story is mixed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but so tell us more about how this all went down.
So this all started when a number of different instances of racism occurred on the campus. Okay, so one of the most notable instances had to do with a swastika sign that was placed on a piece of feces. Last month, the swastika scribbled in human feces was found in the restroom of Gateway Hall, a dorm offering gender-neutral suites and bathrooms that is supposed to be a gateway for future of inclusive living. Okay, Jonathan Butler said the following. He's the one who started this whole protest. I already feel like campus is an unlivable space, so it's worth sacrificing something of this grave amount because I'm already not wanted here. I'm already not treated like a human. A bunch of other students spoke out about this as well, but let me give you some more instances of the racism that allegedly occurred on campus. Peyton Head says, last night I was walking through campus, some guy riding on the back of a pickup truck decided it would be okay to continuously scream the N-word at me. I really just want to know why my simple existence is such a threat to society. Now look, I said N-word, but they said the word to him, okay, repeatedly.
And he capitalized.
Yes. Also, for those of you who wonder why I'm always talking about the importance of inclusion and respect, it's because I've experienced moments like this multiple times at this university, making me not feel included here. Also, on October 5th, an inebriated white male student allegedly mounted the stage of a Legion of Black Collegians homecoming royalty court rehearsal and began spouting the N-word. The student was moved from the campus. There were other cases as well. Students claiming that they're being called the N-word as they walk through the campuses. Apparently nothing's being done about this. So this is why the hunger strike started. This is why the football team decided to protest.
All right, now let me give you all the nuance, okay? So in some instances, you go, wait a minute, okay, now I see the other side. So at one point, a black student activist peacefully surrounded a homecoming parade and blocked it. Okay, they're trying to make a point.
Right.
Now, they said one of the instances of racial harassment was when people harassed them for blocking the homecoming parade. I wouldn't count that one. Okay.
Well, when they were blocking the homecoming parade, they were doing it specifically to get some sort of reaction from Tim Wolf because he wasn't doing anything about all these cases of harassment, right? And so he didn't handle it well. They allege that his car hit one of the protesters. Okay, I don't know whether or not that really happened, but that's what they're alleging. But here's the thing. If there are clear cases of students being harassed because of their race, you are the president. It is your responsibility to do more than just raise money for the university. You're supposed to represent the students that are paying to go to your school.
So let me finish this side, and then I'll get to the other side as well, okay? So if you're or blocking the homecoming parade in order to get a reaction, you can't complain about the reaction. Unless you say that in the reaction, people shouted the N-word or racial, but that's not, as far as I can know, that's not the charge here, okay? Then they surrounded Tom Wolf's car. He reacted poorly to that. On the other hand, if your car was surrounded, I'm not sure how you would react either, right? Now, again, there was a peaceful protest, so there was no sign of violence or intimidation, but your car being surrounded, I can see how he would feel uncomfortable about that. But even Tom Wolf, the guy who stepped down, says he handled it poorly, and he said, quote, had I gotten out of the car to acknowledge the students and talk with them, perhaps we wouldn't be where we are today. And so that brings you to the other side. Tim Wolf, continued to not react. He kept saying, we're going to study this, we're looking into it. But go and have a conversation with the guys, right? And so find out what's going on. Now, look, it might be that some of the kids, the people that yelled the N-word were students. Well, then you got to have much swifter action and get them off campus, do whatever you're going to do, right? It might have been that some of them were not students. But then even so, you have to have a conversation about what can we do about that. And what I would want to do is hear out the black students and say, okay, what are your proposals? Doesn't mean I'm going to accept all your proposals, but we're going to talk them through and have this conversation, right? And so at the end of the day, I don't want anybody to get me wrong. I love what they did, and because during the hunger strike, got the student athletes involved. If the student athletes hadn't gotten involved, he'd still be on the hunger strike.
Of course.
Okay, but he had to take that first action, and they had to take actions like interrupting the homecoming parade in order to catch people's attention. Because I want you to hear out what the student body president was saying there, Peyton Head, right? He's like, I'm here working hard at this university. I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm still the N-word. That's what I still get yelled at in the middle of the day. Now, you've never experienced that. I had a friend who, we're going to college, he's Indian, and a bunch of frat boys at the college frat, at the football frat, yelling at him drunk, well, they're drunk, right? Like, hey, Mexican, go back home. Okay?
Wow.
So, I mean, that's ignorant on a couple of different fronts, right? But if you're white and you never experienced that, honky doesn't count, okay? Cracker doesn't count. And I'm saying that because they don't have any real power over you. You don't know how alone you feel. It's only 7% of the student body is black at University of Missouri, right? So it's not like they feel empowered to begin with, right? They're working hard to get to the position. No matter what they do, they still get called the N-word, right? So you have to be sensitive to that, not because you need to be touchy-feely, but because he's saying, hey, just treat me like a human being. Notice my existence, and not just in these derogatory ways. So is it all right to do a hunger strike for that? Hell yes. Now, a lot of people will get really mad at the football team. Oh, don't get political. No, but that's not unprecedented. People have been student groups and sports groups have gotten political in the past. For example, the UCLA basketball team. Just saw a documentary about this. Legendary, won 10 titles in a short period of time. Super clean cut. Everybody looks up to them. Time in the 1960s and early 70s, there's a lot of unrest, and they're like, well, the UCLA kid. No. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It originally was Lou Alcindor. Part of him coming out and recognizing the things that are going wrong in the country, whether it was Vietnam or racial injustice, was him saying, you know me as this legendary basketball player, but I'm here to tell you, here are the real problems that black people face, that we all face as students, as young people going to Vietnam or possibly being called up for Vietnam. That even more so from Bill Walton, who was white, did the same thing. Man, they were so mad at him. You're an upstanding young white kid with all the great future ahead of you. What are you mad about? It's like, but all these guys are going to be sent to Vietnam. Maybe I'm going to be sent to Vietnam. And just because I don't feel it doesn't mean that there isn't great racial injustice, right? So you should give Bill Walton a tremendous amount of credit for that. And you should give these athletes at the University of Missouri a tremendous amount of credit for bringing this issue up. It doesn't mean that they're right about every single charge or every single action that they took to get to this point. But it does mean you should hear them out. And if you don't, maybe you shouldn't be president of the school.
All right, well, in other news today, there's some good news when it comes to SeaWorld. SeaWorld has decided to discontinue its killer whale show at their San Diego location. Now, there are a number of different SeaWorlds throughout the country. There's one in Orlando. However, this particular one will end its Shamu show, as they refer to it. Now, in its place would be a new orca experience debuting in 2017, described as informative and designed to take place in a more natural setting that would carry a conservation message inspiring people to act. Now, what they're planning on replacing it with seems a little better, but I'm very skeptical about whether or not it's really going to be a huge change or a big difference. Now, PETA is not the most credible animal rights organization, if you ask me, but they say that this is the equivalent of having a dog that you're beating and then you just stop beating it, you just keep it in a crate, right? So it's a little better, but is it a lot better? I don't know. They haven't been very detailed about what they're planning on doing. But the fact that they're ending their Shamu show is a good thing, and obviously this is a response from the criticisms that they got from the documentary Blackfish in 2013.
Yeah, I haven't seen Blackfish yet, so I'm sure that I'll be properly outraged if I see it. So I don't mean to make light of it. I just don't know what they're supposed to do other than pack up and go home. Because if you don't have the show, they're saying this might end the whole theater aspect of SeaWorld. What's left? And maybe it's enough. Maybe just their name recognition, and they could ride that for however many more years and say, come see the fish, but there's no act. I know that the activists are happy that at least they're not going to be teaching them all the tricks and whatever they have to do to teach them the tricks.
Right.
Right. I don't see much harm in keeping the animals there, except for generically what we do with all zoos and aquariums, which is bottling up these fish that are supposed to be in an ocean into a tiny little area. If you hate that, I'm with you. I've never liked zoos, and that's my issue with aquariums. But if they can't do that, well, then obviously they can't exist.
Right, exactly. I don't know what's left for SeaWorld. I don't know what they're really planning on doing as soon as they get rid of this Shamu show. Now, the plan is to gradually phase out the Shamu show, and that comes amid efforts at both the state and federal level to clamp down on SeaWorld by ending the captive breeding of orcas, which would effectively bring to an end the park's theatrical shows. So right now in California specifically, there are a number of lawmakers who are targeting SeaWorld, and they want to stop SeaWorld from, breeding the orcas there. They want to stop them from, keeping them in these unnatural, captive spaces. And I don't think that SeaWorld's going to survive. Like, the reason why they've changed this in California specifically is because of the lawmakers targeting them. And also, more importantly, people aren't going to SeaWorld anymore. I don't know if it's true of Orlando, but it's certainly true of San Diego. And they're like, we need to do something. So they met with investors, and they came up with this.
Yeah, and they're putting a lot of money into it. They're putting $100 million. They had planned to expand the tanks that the whales were in anyway. This is become part of their expansion plans. Now, I want to ask you guys, because I'm again genuinely curious what you guys think. This is on the TYT app. So do you think SeaWorld should just shut down altogether? Okay, so far in the voting, I think yes is winning, 64 to 36, but there's plenty of voting left to do. So, look, my take on it is split jury. That's why I'm curious what you guys think. Like, they say, okay, don't breed the orcas in captivity. Okay, but they're in captivity, so that means if you're not breeding them, the other orcas won't exist at all, and they won't get to have sex. So, I'm not sure that's a big win for the orcas. Okay, congratulations, you guys don't get to have sex, and you won't have kids.
I think if you breed orcas in captivity, well then, their offspring will be used to living in captivity. It's not easy to kind of introduce them back to the wild.
Yeah,
so I think that's the issue.
At least they'll exist. So,
yeah, but
that's why I think it's a little bit. I think it's a little tougher question.
Yeah.
But I'm sure people will get on me and tell me that I'm anti-whale. I'm pro whale. I'm not sure which way it goes.
I'm going to say something controversial.
Here we go.
I think we're on the same boat. Look, I want the right thing to happen in the end, right? Like, I care about this issue. However, this isn't the most important issue to me, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know what the right response to this is. Yeah. See what I'm saying?
Look, if you say to me, hey, should we beat the whales and the fish? I say, no, don't beat them. Don't beat them to teach tricks. That's an easy one for me. Okay, we settled that, right? If you say to me, should we keep them in captivity at all? And if they're already going to be in captivity, should we let them have kids? Then I'm a bad guy because I think that's a hard question. Right.
All right, let's move on to police brutality. What are we doing?
All right, great.
What's the second hour for if it's not for police brutality? Okay. All right. Police officials in Tuscaloosa, Alabama are being investigated through an internal investigation after video surveillance shows them using excessive force on college students. Now, this happened after a noise complaint was called into the police department, and we can't show you the full video because it's too long. We're going to show you the most important part of the video, but just so you know what happens before, the video shows an officer talking to those inside the apartment at the front door, and those inside refused to exit the apartment. The students questioned whether they were being arrested or detained, and whether the officers were within their rights to search the apartment. Now, the cops refused to answer any questions, wouldn't talk about whether someone was going to get detained, wouldn't talk about whether or not someone's getting arrested, what would they get arrested for. Remember, this is just over a noise complaint. That's it. It happened at 3 a.m, and it escalated to this. And a warning, it's a very graphic video. What is this all on video, I don't give a shit. Which makes me think that body cameras aren't really going to make that much of a difference.
Now, they'll get in trouble for this. I think it'll make a difference. So, I always start these stories with a cop's perspective, maybe partly because I very briefly worked at a couple of prosecutors' offices. They're going in at 3 a.m. And they got a noise disturbance call. So the kids are being a pain in the ass to their neighbors. The guy's trying to get some sleep. He can't get to sleep. So, and then the kids are not listening to what the cops are saying. They're like, you can't come in. They're asking the kids to come out. They won't come out, right? So, it's a tough situation. Okay, now that we've said that, you don't need to use maximum force in every instance. It's a noise complaint. Yeah, I know. I'm with you. I want them to shut up, right? And I want you to be able to have the power to tell them to cut it out, okay? I don't want you to kick the living crap out of them doing that. I don't want you to treat them like they're Pablo Escobar. So what was with that, knocking the door down, grabbing the tasering them immediately?
Yep.
Okay.
Using their batons.
Yeah.
Look, you already have several cops on each student. 3 students were arrested, I should say. You already have them on the ground, several cops on them. You don't need to keep beating them up. You don't need to keep tasing them, but they continuously do that. And it's because these students had the audacity to question why the cops were trying to either detain or arrest them. Here's the thing, okay? People want answers. If you're about to be detained or arrested, just let them know you're not following the law. Which, by the way, I don't think anyone should be detained or arrested over a noise complaint, right? In the olden days, it's crazy. They used to knock on the door and tell you, if you don't cut it out, we're going to give you a citation, okay? Yes. But citations don't exist anymore, apparently.
Yeah, no, they exist afterwards, after they kick the crap out of you. So, yeah, look, there's a reasonable way to do this. To say, hey, look, man, these citation costs, I don't know what they are, but let's make up a number. I think I've heard this before in the case in New Jersey. $500. Do you want a $500 citation?
Look at him.
Okay, no problem. I'm going to need your ID. Now, if you don't give me your ID as I'm trying to give you a citation, I'm going to have to detain you for that, right? Whatever the correct procedure is, right? But that's not how they're trained. That's why I keep yelling about the training. They're trained. The biggest crime in America is disrespecting a police officer. If they don't follow your orders, immediately beat the crap out of them, right? How dare they? You have to show them who's in charge. You don't believe me? Go look at the police trainings. We've seen the police trainings, right? Show them who's in charge. Do whatever you need to do to let them know you're in charge. Now, the theory behind it is, hey, you'll get anarchy and chaos if you're trying to soft pedal it. You have to use a stern voice, get the situation under control. Does it look under control to you? They forgot the original theory behind it.
Yeah.
Now it's ass-kicking because you don't disrespect me. Now they're like the mob bosses. But don't disrespect me. If you disrespect me, I'm going to taser you and I'm going to show you who's boss. Right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing here. And this is what we see in almost all the police videos.
Also, another thing that I want to draw to everyone's attention. If you are a white person who's seen all of these instances of police brutality and you think you're safe because, it's only those black thugs that get targeted, you're absolutely wrong. This is impacting all sorts of people. Those are college students, white college students in Alabama, okay? Doesn't matter who you are. When you give cops a pass for this type of brutality, they're going to target everyone, okay? So anyone who thinks that they're safe, you're not safe.
If they're coming for white people in Alabama, they've come for everybody.
Yeah.
So, all right, here we go. But now, go ahead, keep saying, no. You just listen to the cops. Just listen to the cops. Yeah, why don't you tell Clive and Bundy? Right? If they come to your house, hey, if they came to take your guns, and they just said, hey, give me the guns, I'm a cop, listen. Would you listen to them? Yes, if you're a right-winger, that's the very last thing you would ever listen to, right? No, but everybody else has got to bow their heads. All right, anyway, then now let's go to another hideous cop story.
Yes. 2 police officials in Louisiana are facing second-degree murder charges after they opened fire on a truck and killed a 6-year-old boy. His father is also in severe critical condition as a result of this shooting. The 2 cops are Norris Greenhouse Jr. and Derek Stanford. It's unclear as to why they opened fire on this truck, but there was some sort of a chase, and as a result, they started to shoot at the car. And the 6-year-old died as a result. So Jeremy Martis, a first grader, was hit by 5 bullets in the head and chest as the officers pursued his father's car. His father was hospitalized with gunshot wounds and was listed in critical condition. It's unclear why officers pursued or why shots were fired, since investigators say there was no outstanding warrants against the father, Chris Few, and that no firearm was found in the vehicle.
Okay, now, we first saw the story at the end of last week. Poor kid, he's precious, as any 6-year-old would be, right? And they say that he was autistic too. He loved everybody and really good heart. Doesn't matter. He's a 6-year-old. I mean, and to see him lying dead like that, it's impossible not to affect him, right? So in the beginning, the cops made up a story. These guys did, in particular. Oh yeah, there was a warrant. Turns out there isn't a warrant. So now, to be fair to the other authorities in this case, they're not protecting these guys. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Can I read you a statement from
Yes.
the police colonel? He says, "We took some of the body cam footage. I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm going to tell you this. It's the most disturbing thing I've seen, and I will leave it at that. The little boy was buckled into the front seat of that vehicle, and that is how he died."
Okay. So, I was worried that they weren't going to take any action here, because this is almost always what happens. Oh, yeah, there was a threat. He was going to get us with a car. Car's a deadly weapon, right? So there's no weapon in the car, but it doesn't matter how many unarmed people have you seen get shot, and all they do is cover up for them. The female cop in Pennsylvania that just got off last week, she shot a guy twice in the back. He said he made me do it. I thought he was reaching for something. He was unarmed. It doesn't matter. Reaching for something qualifies. In this case, it's 2 minority officers and a white boy who got killed. So normal rules might be suspended. This is down in Louisiana. All of a sudden, the cops say, no, we're not protecting these guys. And now we got second-degree murder and attempted second-degree murder. Don't get me wrong. I love it. That is what they should face. I wish that other cops would do this likewise in every instance and care about all lives that are lost. But when you see that 6-year-old's picture, as I have, right, I was so worried they weren't going to do anything. But they are doing something. They are going to go get these guys. And then, hey, look, they're going to have their day in court. Go ahead. Prove that you were under some sort of threat, right? But they can almost never prove it. But they often get away with it. Jury goes to officers, 2 cops. Who am I going to believe, you or this dad who was running away? Now, when you kill a 6-year-old, it's a little different. I mean, look, on the other hand, they killed 12-year-old Tamir Rice. Seem to be getting away with that, right?
So, as members of the media, we're placed in a curious situation, a difficult situation, right? I actually don't find it that difficult because I feel like what we're doing is right. But it's important to report these stories, and it's important to hold these authorities accountable because we don't want instances like this to ever happen again in the future. We don't want 6-year-olds to be murdered by police officials like this. But at the same time, it's this type of reporting, it's this type of accountability, it's this type of, surveillance that cops will now use as an excuse for why they're not policing, right? We don't want to police because we're going to get criticized if we police too aggressively. No, be smart, okay? Don't go off and open fire on a truck that has a person that does not have a warrant, that isn't doing anything wrong, doesn't have a weapon. Why are you opening fire on that car, right?
So that gets to the core of this issue. Put aside everything else, race, everything else involved. This is the problem with police training. Who cares? Just shoot, right? Now, they don't say it in those words. What they say is, don't take any danger with your life. Okay? We want to make sure you all get back home to your family. Other people's family, you got a 6-year-old in the car, that's their problem, not your problem, right? Now, in this case, oops, we did shoot and kill the 6-year-old. This was going to be hard to cover up. And plus, you got other issues here. So, okay, no, this one was wrong. This one was wrong. And look, they're not even convicted yet. Who knows? Maybe they even get away with it, right? Do not shoot into people's cars if they're not shooting at you. He doesn't have a gun. He's not shooting at you. Don't shoot into them. You don't know who's in the car. You remember here in LA, they're trying to chase that cop killer, right, a little while back. They start shooting at cars that barely resemble his car without looking at who's inside. They shoot 2 old Asian women when the guy that they're trying to get is a giant black guy. Okay. I don't know. Who cares? Just start shooting. Just start shooting. Don't take any chances with your life. Right? No. It is a hard job. You are supposed to take some chances to make sure you don't shoot the wrong people.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, fun cop stories.
Wow. Okay.
Packers versus Panthers. Cam Newton has scored a 1-yard touchdown run and wants to give the ball to a fan in the stands, but Julius Peppers has the ball, and Cam's like, "Hey, can I please have?"
Alright, back in the Turks. Jesus, in a second I'm going to ask you to bring up graphic 12 again. Okay, so, but let me read some tweets in the meanwhile. Tatiana Lang says, in the video you can clearly see he was being very threatening in the fetal position, hence the taser and the baton, referring to that Alabama story. And same story, John Blackman writes in, it was really effective how those cops were able to keep things quiet after they arrived.
I know, seriously. Best point.
Oh no, you're gonna make me do it. Alright, John Blackman, you got a t-shirt. Okay. Check out the cool TYT t-shirts at shoptyt.com.
You know what? Your style is on point today, Uger.
Thank you.
You got like that little hair thing going on. You're wearing a good suit jacket.
Not a big deal.
Crisp white shirt.
Thank you. I've been emphasizing the crisp white shirts.
It's nice.
Okay, members of the day are Scott Dooley, member number 1591, and Menga Zhang, member number 1083. So thank you guys. We've got a fun post game for you guys today, of course. And the way you become a member of the show is tytnetwork.com/subscribe. Alright, now let me see graphic 12, Jesus. That was part of the Louisiana shooting. I don't know why Colin Kaepernick got involved in it, but I guess that's because he had time since he got benched. Okay. Alright, no word on where Blaine Gabbert was. Okay, alright. Random football reference. We go forward.
Alright. Let me set up the story for you guys so you guys know what the atmosphere was like.
Right.
So, Mothers Against Drunk Driving puts together an award ceremony for a Florida cop who has made 100 DUI arrests. Now, the only problem is Michael Zaliga showed up drunk. In fact, he showed up so drunk that he had to be sent home and he couldn't collect his award. Now, it is assumed...
Shame.
No, it is assumed that he drove himself to the conference in that state. However, the officer denies he drove drunk and insists that he only had 1 or 2 drinks before the conference, which is hilarious because that's usually what people say when they get stopped for a DUI.
He was so drunk, his superior officers were like, dude, you gotta go into a hotel room and sober up right now. And he starts yelling at them, and they suspend him on the spot, right? So, I mean, he was a mess, apparently.
Okay, he's been promoted recently. Okay, before the conference, he got promoted. This isn't going to do anything to his promotion. Homeboy showed up drunk to a Mothers Against Drunk Driving award ceremony. Okay? You're driving drunk. You're breaking the law. But that's all right. We're not going to...
1 day of paid suspension. So another day he gets the drink.
Can I have a 1-day paid suspension? That sounds freaking awesome.
Right. But but it goes in your permanent record. Will it affect things like a promotion? No, because we're giving it to you anyway.
Amazing.
If it was a regular citizen that showed up drunk to an event like this, perhaps there would have been different consequences, especially if this guy was involved, because he probably would have arrested him on the spot. That's what he's getting the award for, arresting so many people for being drunk.
I know.
While driving.
Unbelievable.
Okay, it's not the first time it's happened, by the way. Back in 2011, Deborah Oberlin, former president of MAD, was arrested for driving with an alcohol level that was 3 times the legal limit. There was David Griffin, who was the acting chapter president of MAD, and a former deputy police chief, and he was driving under the influence and arrested as well. So, I don't know what it is about working at an organization that, gets you to do that thing, and I'm sure this is just anecdotal. And hey, Mothers Against Drunk Driving does a lot of great work. Just some silly coincidences in this case.
Yes.
But on the cop, back to the original story, but that does sometimes happen. It's like the guys who are most against gays.
Right, and then they end up being gay themselves.
Right, it's like Marcus Bachman, Michelle Bachman's husband. He's doing gay reparative therapy. Have you seen the dude? Come on, right? So let's just call it what it is, right?
Yeah.
So here's a guy who's like, I'll show those guys who are drinking and driving. And he takes out his aggression probably against himself on those people.
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. God knows how many stupid things he's done while he was drunk.
No, don't get behind the wheel while you're drunk. Don't be an idiot. All right, let's move on to some fun stories. Christians who apparently have the most perfect lives and have nothing else to be concerned about are worried about Starbucks' recent holiday cups and how they don't celebrate Christmas enough. Man, I want to live that life. I want to live that life where everything is so peachy that you're concerned about Starbucks holiday cups. Anyway, those are the cups in question.
How dare they? I can't believe they would do this to Christmas.
They're worried that the cups are too minimalist, and previous cups had things like snowflakes and reindeer on them,
which is much more respectful of Jesus.
By the way, Starbucks holiday cups never endorsed one particular religion over another. And by the way, Christmas colors are green and red, so I don't know what they're upset about. Okay, so you're probably wondering, who's complaining? Like, there's no way that someone actually complained about this, but you're wrong. One person by the name of Andrea Williams, who, by the way, lives in the UK, so she can just shut up about America having a war on Christmas. She says, this is a denial of historical reality and the great Christian heritage behind the American dream that has so benefited Starbucks. This also denies the hope of Jesus Christ and his story so powerfully at this time of the year.
They denied the hope of Jesus Christ by not putting snowflakes on the cup and other things that they've put on in the past, like snowmen. Jesus lived in the Middle East. There were no snowmen.
I don't...
Let alone flying reindeers. How stupid are you?
But beyond the stupidity of it, let's just think about how weak you feel your religion is. That you need the endorsement of a Starbucks latte cup. It's pathetic.
No, but you know why? Look, this group is called Christian Concern that she's apparently a part of. She writes in at Breitbart, which is an insane right-wing rag. And so, but you know what they're like? They're like the fundamentalist Muslims. Like, oh, do not drill the Prophet Muhammad! His feelings will be hurt. He's dead. But anyway, his feelings are going to be hurt, and hence my feelings are going to be hurt. Dude, if you have the almighty Allah on your side, what do you care what anybody draws? And if that's true for the offense of drawing a picture, Allah's going to torture him forever anyway in hell. What do you care? So don't worry, Starbucks, without the snowflakes, you're going to hell. If you believe that, then why would you care?
I know, there's more. I love all of this. Let's go to the next graphic, okay? So this is a dude on Twitter. He's saying, and he's responding to the Breitbart article, which, by the way, Breitbart, really, you have nothing better to write about? You're going to write about the war on Christmas? Who are you, O'Reilly? My Christmas mentality, if the store won't promote Christmas regarding Starbucks, I'm not spending my hard-earned money there. Well, good. Don't spend your money there, you loser. And then finally, this is my favorite one. Former pastor Joshua Furstein claimed in a viral Facebook video that he had, quote, pranked Starbucks by simply telling them his name was Merry Christmas, thus forcing the surely unimpressed barista to write the words Merry Christmas on the cup. You are pathetic.
That's so funny. The barista is not part of the war on Christmas. He or she doesn't care. You're not pranking them. You're like, okay, dude, whatever. You want to call yourself Merry Christmas? Have at it, host. They're very likely Christian. They don't care. They're not planning a war against you. But my favorite is the 2 tweets in response, actually. Zach Hunt tweeted in, if your way of pranking Starbucks involves buying a cup of their coffee, I'm pretty sure the joke's on you. I love it. And Ron Burr says, if you need the coffee chain to be your ambassador of Christ, you need to re-examine your relationship with God.
For real.
Okay.
Crazy.
No, and finally, that's the piece of projection that we talk about with conservatives all the time. What do they say about the left? They say, oh, they love to be the victims. Just pick yourself up by the bootstraps and stop looking for people that are going to give you stuff, right?
Yeah.
Why do you need Starbucks to tell you Merry Christmas or to put a cross on their coffee cup? Why don't you pick yourself up by the bootstraps and have a great Christmas on your own, right? The reason is you love being the victim.
Yeah.
I mean, boy, this is like my English teacher in high school. If I tried to do I got a great symbolism in this story, and I'd explain this wild-ass theory I had for symbolism, and he'd start doing this. I'm like, what is he doing? It's like, you're reaching for a way to become a victim, okay? Let it go, drink the coffee, you'll feel better.
Yes. All right, one final story for you guys. There is a new business out of Brooklyn where you can rent a mom. It's known as Need a Mom, and according to the owner of this business, Need a Mom is a service through which busy and or emotionally needy customers can purchase for $40 an hour a short-term temporary mother.
This is what we've become.
No, I don't know why I feel soft when it comes to this story. Because
you should be hard when it comes to this story.
No.
I'm very hard right now.
You're so gross.
When he said rent a mom, I was like, wait a minute.
No, that's not what it's for, you nerd. Okay. Rent a Mom is for people who might have lost their mothers or someone who moved far away from where their family lives, and you feel lonely, you want that parental guidance, you want that person to give you advice, but you don't have your mom with you. And so it made me think about how much my mom means to me, and what would I do if I didn't have her to give me advice or cook me tasty food or hug me when I'm having a bad day. I could totally understand this business. So far she's only had 6 customers, but who knows, it could grow.
Already, Hollywood agencies have reached out to her, because they see, maybe they can TV show, reality show out of it or something.
Yeah.
Right? And so, okay, fine, I'm split on it. I mean, I get why people want it, right? And she's charging $40 a pop. She'll even do barter. She's like, I got a dog that needs walking. You walk my dog and I'll be your mom. This is the world we live in. So what are the different things she does? She'll show you how to sew on a button to your shirt.
Listen to your love life woes.
Okay, that's mainly
she'll accompany you to the grocery store and help you cook. By the way, Nina Keneally is the person who put this business together.
She has all the best intentions. I'm a small business owner, so I like her entrepreneurial spirit. And she's saying she's going to a yoga class, and all the younger women were bitching at her anyway about their love life anyway. She's like, I might as well charge these brats.
That's not the way she was thinking about it. She was like, look, there's a need. Especially when you live in a city like New York or LA, and people have their transplants. They're not from there. Their families are probably not from there, and they get lonely and they want that parental guidance. I totally understand it. Okay, now I get it too. You
Softened me a little bit on it, but overall, you're supposed to have real people in your life that do this, that don't charge you for the service. It doesn't have to be your mom, but that's why we're supposed to have family and friends. So
some people don't have that.
I know that's pretty sad. I get that, so I feel bad about making fun of them.
Yeah.
But I will.
Don't.
But the reason I say that is because instead of paying that lady to be your substitute mom, go make a friend, right? And maybe your friend knows how to cook, and you guys, or maybe you guys can learn together.
It's
become a human being and interact like we used to.
No, it's way easier said than done. I realize that once you enter real adulthood, you're not going to school anymore, and you're just surrounded by your coworkers all the time. Or maybe you're working from home and you're not surrounded by coworkers all the time. One of the hardest things to do is to build real, lasting friendships.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which is why I feel lucky that I live where I grew up, because I'm surrounded by people that I've known since childhood, and we're close and we're good friends. But a lot of people, they'll move away, and making friends is so difficult because people are cliquey, and once they have their cliques, it's hard to kind of, you know, get yourself involved in that clique.
But maybe you're
to infiltrate that.
No, I hear you. That's why maybe your rental mom could help you with that.
I have a real mom, and she's wonderful.
Okay, I hear you. All right, fine. Anna, it makes a good point. So if you need it, I hear you. But please work towards growing out of it so you can have real family and friends that can have your back. But in order to do that, by the way you develop healthy relationships is you also have their back. And the reason a lot of people don't have this is because they don't have the time to give back to family and friends. So you have to be realistic about that too. Mm-hmm. I'm just in favor of forming real human bonds instead of paying for everything. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And I'm also a little worried about her because some dudes will misunderstand and they'll be like, "Oh, a mom. I'll rent a mom."
Guys are so pervy. Like, why do you guys have to ruin everything?
I'm a bad man! Okay. Alright, we're out of time. We do have a great post game for you guys. What is it about? God knows.
Wedding planning. I want to talk about that.
Oh, now that it's your wedding. Oh my God. Remember her when it was other people's weddings? She's like, oh, wedding planning. And she's like, wedding planning.
It'll be fun.
I'm going to rip on you in the post game. That's what's going to happen, okay? Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, hold on. CYTNetwork.com/subscribe to watch all the post games if you remember. Now, bye-bye.